Hey guys, we're gonna try something new. We're gonna do no intro. You already read the title. Let's get right into the video. All right. So throughout this video, I feel like it's better if we're going to talk about the beware advantage to talk about the past disadvantages, because as much as I call it a beware advantage, it's obviously a beware disadvantage. So the first one that I want to talk about is the Jamal advantage. And so Jamal found it hanging from a tree, and he had found it. Like it wasn't given to him. He found it, and as soon as he opened it, and by the way, there was no note on the outside. He opened it and immediately it said, "You cannot drop it. You cannot put it back. You now must go to Island of the Idols." And so overall, he was given not much choice, and it was kind of a by luck thing. And because there never been a disadvantage before, obviously he had no reason to not take a piece of paper in the woods, which obviously up until this point has only been positive. And again, to preface, if you guys don't remember, this is in season 39 in Island of the Idols. So he goes to Island of the Idols with Rob and Sandra, and immediately they say that there's no free lunches on Survivor. This is their argument that they give him. And so, as a punishment for quote unquote taking a free lunch, is that he loses his vote for the next tribal. But in this idea of, okay, well, at least you get this. He gets a paper and a pen to write a fake advantage, and he can do whatever he wants with it. So, if I'm not mistaken, from my memory, I believe that he wrote a fake legacy advantage. If I got that wrong, go ahead and correct me in the comments. But I'm pretty sure he wrote a fake legacy advantage, which is an interesting choice. I actually think it's probably the best idea because an idol is just like, it's really hard to fake an idol. And if there's no legacy advantage so far, then it's easy to add it like an advantage to the game that isn't in it yet, because then no one can compare the packaging to the real one. Now he is banking on the fact that someone isn't just hiding it. But he got lucky because there was not a legacy advantage in Island of the Idols. So when he gets back, he tries to convince everyone that it's real. I forget who he gives it to, but he gives it to somebody to try and put a target on their back, and it doesn't work. And overall, it's definitely an overall disadvantage for him. And he gets voted out not only in the same episode, but because it was a double episode, he also got voted out in that same cycle, like meaning in that same 3-day span, which is saying something because that means that he immediately got me. But the thing is it wasn't necessarily because of the advantage. It wasn't because he couldn't vote. The vote wasn't even close. It was like 8-4 or something. But the overall point is that when he got this disadvantage, it hurt him a lot. We didn't have like enough know abouts of the advantage to even try and dodge it or make a decision. Unlike Xander, who was able to make a decision, but we'll get to Xander later. But he never got a chance to dodge it. He had no background info on any disadvantages in the past, and so of course he's going to open it. This isn't some sort of no free lunches. Now, if they were like, okay, here's something, and it could have a negative or could be positive, and then he picked, that's his fault. But because he picked up a piece of paper, and the person who was walking with him could have easily picked it up themselves, and then they would have gotten it. So it's very kind of cheesy to me and very unfair. I believe to be like, I just call it the Jamal disadvantage, but I'm sure it has a name that I forget. Next, we have Tony extortion. So this is the next, in my opinion, like the next big quote unquote disadvantage. And so Tony receives it from EOE, and I believe it was Natalie and Parvati. Really, like, well, Natalie was the queen of the Edge, and Parvati's the queen of Survivor, so it kind of makes sense. And so they're like, okay, who can we give this disadvantage to? Who's going to be super frantic and go and get us some fire tokens? And immediately it pans to Tony, and it goes to commercial, and we come back, and Tony's racing through the forest, and oh my god, I got an advantage. So he reads it, and of course he receives it in his bag and opens it and finds out the contents of the what ends up being a disadvantage, and he learns that he has to pay 6 fire tokens by the next immunity challenge, or he loses his vote for the next vote or tribal, and he has no shot at winning an immunity. And so overall, this again, disadvantage, and even if he gets all 6 fire tokens, he doesn't get something extra. He just gets the stuff that he already had back, a chance at the immunity challenge and his vote, things that he already had. So this is a full-on disadvantage. Now, I will say, so is Jamal's. They're both disadvantages. Xander's is different. Xander's has a positive, and that's probably why production called it an advantage. But these 2 advantages, the Jamal disadvantage and the Tony extortion, are 2 clear disadvantages. There's no positive there. You're almost trying to dig yourself out of a hole, especially with Tony's. Whereas with Jamal, he was just kind of screwed. And so from here, Tony uses his social game to get, I believe it was it Ben, Nick, and Jeremy to lend him one each from each of them, and I believe he pays back all three of them at some point in the season. I believe he pays back two of them. He pays back Jeremy, and um, he pays back Jeremy, and he pays back the person who isn't Nick that I already forgot, and then he pays back Nick later in the season. So everyone gets paid back. But yeah. For this, it didn't really hurt him with his overall game. In fact, spoiler alert, he ends up winning the entire season. He ends up winning the challenge that he got, his extortion, away for, because he wouldn't have been able to compete in that challenge. And then he also ends up pulling off the and then he also ends up pulling off the biggest blindside of the entire season in that same cycle and episode. And so it kind of shows like it was a disadvantage, but he was able to work out of it, because this disadvantage you were able to work out of, versus the Jamal one in which you couldn't. But the Jamal one was probably less severe than the Tony one was, but they were both clear disadvantages. Now, for the Xander Beware advantage, this is the advantage that's totally different to me. So it's found by Xander, and it's given like the face of an idol, but obviously the back of it's a lot different. You know what I mean? And so so when Xander finds the advantage, on the outside of the wrapping, it says there's basically, I'm paraphrasing, but it basically says this is an advantage, but there's a caveat to the advantage. Open at your own risk, and if you open it, then you have to do what's inside. So that's clear like warning saying that if you open this there's going to be some caveat and or disadvantage. Obviously it doesn't say on there caveat or disadvantage, but you have to assume that, especially because it seems like Xander isn't some recruit like he's seen seasons before. But of course, Xander opens it anyway. He says, "Screw it, man! I'm just gonna open it." And so, he ends up finding out that he cannot vote until the other two beaches find this exact same Beware advantage. But the good thing is that when the advantage is found on the other two beaches, he gets a full idol along with the other two people who also found it on their beach. And so it's an interesting way that the idols work this season. It seems to be a way to keep the idols from just being like, oh, I found an idol, there you go, boom, I'm an idol. It makes it a little bit harder, which I like, but I also don't like it. It kind of complicates it more, especially because now you're like, a lot of times it's fun to, okay, there's 6 people, right? We have 6 votes. It can go 4, 2, 3, but now it's like, okay, there's 4 people, but now the vote can be a 2-to-1 vote because one vote's not going to be there, and it kind of convolutes the game in a way that's like, I feel like bad for Xander, even though I'm not really rooting for Xander. I feel bad for him, which shouldn't be the case. I shouldn't be feeling bad for somebody in Survivor. It's a game. It should be an equal opportunity game to an extent. And so to see someone like I'm literally feeling bad for somebody, that's an issue. And so I feel like overall, when you have this type of advantage / disadvantage, or whatever you want to call it, it does make the game a bit more complicated, and not in necessarily a good way. And also to add, if he wants to figure out if the other 2 tribes have found theirs, and to know if his idol is activated, he says certain phrases that are like code words for the other 2 people who have found the idols on the other beaches at challenges, and that they will kind of like match their phrases, and if they all say like their individual phrase, then they'll know that they all activated. But I believe it gets activated whether they say it or not, but that's how they know that it's activated, is if each person at the challenge says it. And so it's a very interesting and kind of kooky way to do it, but I like it to an extent. I think this is the worst disadvantage out of all of them, but because it has an advantage, like at the end it says, but if you do this, then you get a full idol, it's also the best. So it's kind of the worst and the best. This one's definitely the worst as far as its punishment, because Jamal's was you lose your vote. Tony's was you lose your vote and you can't win. You can't compete in the next immunity challenge. This is you lose your vote permanently until the 2 beaches have found theirs. And you also now whoever you tell also knows that, and obviously it hurt him in this episode, seeing that his ally went. And so it really hurts him a lot in this episode specifically. And I do think overall that this was a pretty stupid decision for him to open it. If I were him, what I would have done is put it back and came back if I felt like my game was about to end. Like I felt like I was on the chopping block, because then I'd take it out and be like, okay, and I'll take it tribal, and hopefully the other 2 beaches found theirs, and I'll play it. But to take it right now, when you're in a decent spot where Evie could flip to your side to get out Tiffany, but is when you lose your vote, now Evie's totally going to go the other side. Now, I think Evie probably would have gone with the females anyway, but that's neither here nor there. And so I feel like for the most part, this Beware advantage is the most unfair out of all of them, but it's also the best one out of all of them because there is that caveat, like a positivity caveat, caveat, where it can go from very, very negative to very positive if certain things can happen, and those certain things being that two people on the other beaches find the Beware advantage as well. So a few questions. Can he still use his shot in the dark? Because the entire point of the shot in the dark is that you're risking your vote, one, or sorry, not risking your vote, you're throwing away your vote, one, and then two, you get like the chance of immunity. So is it really fair if he can use it and so can Evie when Evie's risking more? But then you could also make the argument that they both have their vote gone anyway if they use it. It's just that Xander already had his gone. So you can make an argument back and forth both ways. Another question, can he use his extra vote? Because the key word in extra vote is extra. If he doesn't have a vote, can he use his extra vote? But at the same time, it's like, well, it's an extra vote though. So like it's a vote that you use on top of like it's a vote that you can use other than your actual vote. And so if he doesn't have a vote, does he get to keep does he get to use his extra vote, or does that now not able to be played because the entire point of extra is that there's one other than your real one? If you don't have a rule in the first place, then technically extra wouldn't make sense. And so is that, something that's off the table? Because if it is, then it's a really bad disadvantage, because now it kind of neutralizes his other advantage. And so I don't know how I feel about this advantage. And then my second to last bullet is he screwed? Like, is his game over? Is this really going to end his game? Because on top of that, when he gets the merge, is this now going to finally stop and he gets his vote back? There's like, if this goes until just forever, there's no way. And so it's just kind of confusing as a viewer, where I'm like, what? Wait, hold on, what? So if he gets to the merge, he still can't vote, and so, but like, once they get to the merge, they can't find the two idols because they'll be on the old beaches. So what's gonna, like for me in my head, I'm just racing, like what? But at the same time, I understand that they're trying new things, blah blah blah. And so my prediction overall is that, well, the Yase tribe has what? It has Xander, Liana, Evie, and Tiffany. If I were Evie and Liana, I'd just go all in on the intentional matching and vote out Xander. Or you could vote out Tiffany and then save Xander for next tribal, but then you're risking, one, you guys winning the challenge after next, and then Xander staying, and then you merging at that point. Or you're risking the other two beaches having their Beware advantages found, which could happen in the span of an hour. You just never know. And so if I'm Evie and Liana, I'd go all in on the intentional matching, vote out Xander, and then lose again and vote out Tiffany, and then from there y'all can try and weasel your way in, try and Denise and Malcolm your way to the end, because we definitely they are in a tough spot numbers wise, and so they either need to go all in or go all out. And for them, it's definitely a tough situation, and they are gonna have to pick how they want to play the situation, and if they want to do one thing or the other or a third option. And lastly, do you guys like my new intro? I decided to try it because I have some friends that are a little bigger than I am in the YouTube space, and they had told me that their audience liked it better when they just didn't do like a 2-minute intro, because it was very convoluted and kind of clogged up the video, and a lot of times you click off because you're like, oh my god, just get to the video. And so if you guys have a problem with the intro being too long, tell me. If not, then I'll just go back to doing the intro, because I do like to say hi to you guys first before I start spazzing off like a nerd. But again, if the intro does drag on too long for you guys, tell me in the comments. Let me know. Again, tomorrow we'll be dropping our predictions and power rankings podcast. I'm about to go record that in about an hour with Underdog and Skylander. We're gonna have so much fun. It's gonna be like an hour and a half. You guys can watch it. You can listen to it in the car. You can listen to it when you're in school. Got your AirPods in. Whatever you want to do. And again, guys, thank you so much for the continuous support, liking, sharing, subscribing, but most importantly, putting on that notification bell. Thank you guys for the continuous support. Continue to click, and I will continue to make it. If that's it, I will talk to you guys later.